Welcome to Unlocking Passion. Men Report. Let's begin with a new story. William Harris stood in front of the condominium that had cost him 50,000 Australian dollars and stared at a door that would not open with the keys in his trembling hand. The midday sun burned down on Pattaya's third road, while motorbike taxis rushed past, their drivers unaware of the 60-year-old Australian whose entire world was collapsing behind a locked door on the 7th floor of a building he believed he owned. Bill tried the key again. He shook it desperately in the lock, as if persistence alone could change the reality of what was happening. Through the door, he could hear movement, voices speaking Thai, the sound of furniture being moved, and children laughing. Someone else was living in the condominium that Chania had promised would be their shared future, their rental income, their security for the retirement years. Bill had worked 40 years to earn. 3 months earlier, this building had represented hope. Chania Ratanap, the young Thai woman Bill had met in a walking street bar and fallen desperately in love with, had stood right here beside him as Thai officials processed the ownership papers. She had cried tears of gratitude and told him that he had changed her life, that he was the kindest man she had ever known, and that they would build something beautiful together. Now, standing alone in a hallway that smelled of cooking oil and tropical humidity, Bill understood the devastating truth. Chan had never loved him. The condominium had never been their shared investment. The family emergencies he had funded with another $200,000 had never existed. Every tender moment, every whispered promise, every time she had called him her husband, all of it had been a carefully calculated performance designed to separate him from every cent he owned. Bill had arrived in Thailand 11 months earlier with 620,000 Australian dollars, the proceeds from selling his plumbing business and his house in Brisbane after a painful divorce. He had believed he was beginning a new chapter, building a life with a woman who saw him as more than just a source of money. Instead, he had been systematically destroyed by a professional scammer who understood exactly how to exploit a lonely man's desperate need to feel valued and loved. The door suddenly opened, and a Thai woman Bill had never seen before looked at him with confusion and alarm. Behind her, Bill could see the furniture he and Chania had bought together. The leather sofa, the flat-screen television, the dining table where they had eaten countless meals. But those items now belonged to strangers, and Bill himself had no legal claim to any of it. "What do you want?" the woman asked in broken English, her hand on the door, ready to slam it shut. Bill tried to explain that this was his condominium, that he had paid for it, that there had been a terrible mistake. But even as the words came out, he knew how foolish they sounded. The condominium did not belong to him. It had never belonged to him. Thai law prevented foreigners from owning land, and Bill had placed everything in Chan's name, trusting that their relationship meant she would protect his investment. That trust had been the most expensive mistake of Bill's life. At 60 years old, after 40 years of hard physical work building a successful plumbing business, after surviving a bitter divorce that had taken half his assets, after finally believing he had found peace and companionship in Thailand, Bill Harris now had about $20,000 left in his bank account and nowhere to live except a tiny room above a bar on Pattaya's Soi Buakhao. Chan had disappeared completely 2 weeks earlier, taking with her not only Bill's money, but also his belief that someone could love him for who he was instead of what he could provide. And the worst part, the truth that kept Bill awake at night in his small room while he listened to drunk tourists stumbling past, was that he had seen the warning signs and ignored all of them, too desperate for companionship to acknowledge what was happening until it was far, far too late. If you enjoy the stories I create, please consider pressing the subscribe button. Your support is essential to the growth of this channel and helps me dedicate time to creating these videos despite my commitment to a full-time job. Thank you for being here. William Harris, whom everyone called Bill, had never planned to end up in Thailand. Born in 1963 in Brisbane, Australia, he left school at 16 to become an apprentice plumber. By 25, he had started his own small contracting company. Harris Plumbing Services grew steadily over 3 decades. Bill built a solid reputation for honest work and fair prices. His customers were mainly homeowners in the outer suburbs of Brisbane. The work was physically demanding, but by his 50s, Bill had built something valuable. A business that generated steady income. Bill had married young to Sharon. They had 2 children, Jason and Emma, and lived comfortably in Kapalaba. But the marriage had been troubled for years. Sharon resented Bill's long working hours. Bill resented Sharon's constant criticism. Over time, they lived more like housemates than partners. The divorce was finalized in 2020, made bitter by disputes over assets. Sharon received half the house and the value of the business, which forced Bill to take out loans. The children chose to live with their mother and only visited Bill occasionally. The divorce left Bill financially and emotionally devastated. He continued running the plumbing business, but the joy was gone. He went through the motions, serviced divorce debts, and went home alone to a small rented apartment. By 2023, Bill decided he could not continue indefinitely. He was 60 years old, physically worn down by decades of hard work and emotionally exhausted by loneliness. His children were adults with lives of their own. Sharon had remarried and seemed happy. Bill realized that continuing for another decade would only add more lonely years while his body deteriorated. He needed a radical change. The idea of retiring to Thailand came from conversations with other tradesmen. Several had moved to Thailand after retirement or divorce and spoke enthusiastically about the warm weather, low costs, and the possibility of finding companionship. In March 2023, Bill sold Harris Plumbing for $280,000 and sold his remaining share of the house for $340,000. After debts, he had about 620,000 Australian dollars, his entire accumulated wealth from 40 years. His children were worried. "Dad, please be careful," Emma said. "Do not trust anyone with your money, no matter how nice they seem." Bill assured her that he would be careful, that he simply wanted to live somewhere warm where his savings would go further. In August 2023, Bill boarded a one-way flight to Bangkok. He had burned the bridges to his old life. If Thailand was a mistake, he had no easy way back. What Bill did not know was that within weeks he would meet a woman who would make him believe he had found a new beginning. And that belief would lead to the most devastating betrayal of his life. Bill's first week in Pattaya was overwhelming. The city was chaotic. Tourists, motorbikes, street vendors, and bars that never closed. His condominium in Jom Tien was relatively quiet, but even there the energy felt relentless. On his fifth evening, Bill visited Walking Street. He stopped at the Dream Girls bar and chose it because the music was less deafening. Inside, Bill ordered a beer. Several women approached him and asked for company and drinks. Bill politely declined. Then a voice beside him said, "First time in Pattaya." Bill turned and saw a young Thai woman with a warm, genuine smile. She was beautiful in an understated way with minimal makeup and loose clothing. "I am Chanya. I manage the bar." "Bill," he said, shaking her hand. "Yes, first time. Welcome," Chanya said. "Can I sit with you, just to talk?" "No drink needed." Bill agreed, grateful for companionship that did not immediately seem to be trying to sell him something. Chan sat beside him and began a conversation that felt surprisingly normal. They talked about Pattaya, how long she had lived there, 10 years, how she had entered the bar business through family connections, and what she thought of tourists, some respectful and others not. "You are different from most men who come here," Chanya said after about 20 minutes. "Quieter, more respectful." "I am just an old man looking for some peace," Bill said. "You are not old," Chanya said gently. 60 is not old. It is only experienced. That kindness touched Bill. He was used to feeling old and worn out. Chanya's words, whether honest or not, felt good to hear. They talked for another hour. Chanya told him about her family, how she had come to Pattaya to find work, and how difficult it was to make a decent life when working with foreign men who often did not respect Thai women. "I have a daughter," Chanya said quietly. 4 years old. She lives with my mother in the village. I send money home so she can get a good education." "What is her name?" Bill asked. "Ploy," Chanya said, showing him a photo on her phone. A little girl with a bright smile. "She is beautiful," Bill said sincerely. "She is everything to me," Chanya said. "Everything I do is for her." When the night ended, Chanya gave Bill her phone number. "If you ever just want to talk, not in a bar, just as a friend, you can call me." Bill took the number, unsure whether he would use it, but as he returned to his apartment, he felt less lonely than on any night since his arrival in Thailand. What Bill did not know was that every word Chanya had said was part of a carefully rehearsed script. The daughter existed, and the photo was real, but the rest, the modest story, the respectful attitude, the subtle suggestion that Bill was different from other men, was all calculation. Chan Ratanap was not a bar manager. She was a professional scammer who had worked for years with a network that targeted lonely foreign men. She had identified Bill the moment he entered the bar, alone, polite, obviously unfamiliar with Pattaya, and probably recently divorced or widowed based on his age and behavior. She had marked him as the perfect target, and now her work began. Over the next 3 weeks, Bill's relationship with Chanya developed slowly. He texted her a few days after their first meeting, just to say hello. She answered kindly and invited him to meet for coffee, not at the bar, but at a nearby cafe. They met one afternoon. Chanya arrived in simple jeans and a t-shirt, without the flashy makeup or provocative clothing Bill had seen on other bar girls. They talked for 2 hours about Bill's life in Australia, his divorce, and why he had come to Thailand. "You are lonely," Chanya said finally. "I can see that. Many men who come here are lonely." Bill nodded, too moved to deny it. "I understand loneliness," Chanya said. "I have been single for 3 years. My daughter's father left us, when she was a baby. I have no one except my family. This vulnerability created connection. Bill felt that he was sitting across from someone who understood his own struggles. They met several more times over the next few weeks. Always during the day, always in public places, never in bars. Chan insisted on paying for her own meals, which impressed Bill. She did not seem to be trying to ask him for money or manipulate him. "I want you to understand," Chan said on their 5th meeting. "I am not like other women you meet here. I do not want only money. I want connection. Respect, maybe friendship, if that is possible." "That is possible," Bill said softly. In October 2023, 2 months after Bill's arrival, their relationship became romantic. Chanya invited Bill to visit her in her small apartment, a modest one-room place in a working-class district of Pattaya. The place was clean but sparse. A photo of Ploy stood on a small shrine. "This is my real life," Chanya said. "Not the bar, not the show. Just me." They kissed for the first time that night. Bill felt something he had not felt in years. Hope that perhaps companionship and intimacy were still possible for him. Over the next weeks, their relationship deepened. They spent most of their time together, either in Bill's apartment or Chanya's. They had long conversations about their pasts, their fears, and their hopes. "After the divorce, I stopped believing I would ever find someone," Bill confessed one evening. "Karma brings people together when the time is right," Chan said, cuddling close to him. "Maybe we both had to go through what we went through to be ready to appreciate each other." These conversations felt deep and real. Bill, who had been emotionally cautious his entire life, felt safe being vulnerable with Chan. What Bill did not understand was that Chan had carefully constructed every element of her performance. The modest apartment was not really her home. It was a prop she shared with other members of her scam network. The vulnerable conversations were constructed from his answers, reflecting back exactly what he needed to hear. This was not spontaneous romance. It was precise emotional engineering, and Bill was the perfect victim. Lonely, recently divorced, financially secure, and desperate for connection. In November 2023, 3 months after their first meeting, Chanya spoke about money for the first time. "Bill, I need to tell you something," she began one evening, looking stressed and embarrassed. "I have a problem with my family." "What is wrong?" Bill asked with concern. "My mother is sick," Chan said. "She needs an operation, something with her heart. The doctors say it is urgent, but it costs 200,000 baht. That was about 8,000 Australian dollars. Bill immediately felt sympathy. "Can you not pay for it?" "I have saved some money," Chanya said. "Maybe 150,000 baht, but it is not enough. And the doctors say we cannot wait." "I can help," Bill said without hesitation. Chanya shook her head. "No, I cannot ask you for that. We have not been together very long. It is too much, but your mother needs help," Bill insisted. "Let me pay the missing amount," Chan cried, seemingly from gratitude and relief. "You are the kindest man I have ever met. I will pay you back." "I promise." "You do not have to pay it back," Bill said. "I just want your mother to get well." Within 2 days, Bill transferred $8,000 to Chan's Thai bank account. She showed him documents, supposedly from the hospital, showing the medical costs. Bill asked no questions. What Bill did not know was that Chanya's mother was not sick. The hospital documents were forgeries, professionally created by members of her scam network. The $8,000 did not go to medical care. It went directly into accounts controlled by Chan and her accomplices. This was the first major financial commitment. It was also a test to see whether Bill was willing to pay and how easily he would transfer money without verification. Bill passed the test perfectly. He asked no questions. He requested no independent confirmation. He simply transferred the money, grateful that he could help. For Chanya, this confirmed that Bill was the perfect victim. He had money, he trusted easily, and he was emotionally invested enough not to ask uncomfortable questions. Now she could move her operation to the next level. In December 2023, Chan brought up housing. "Bill, I have been thinking about our future," she said one evening. "You pay rent for your apartment. I pay rent for mine. That is wasted money. What do you suggest?" Bill asked. "What if we bought a condominium together?" Chan said. "Something that belongs to us. We could live together, and we would build wealth instead of paying rent." Bill hesitated. Buying a condominium in Pattaya is a big commitment. "I know," Chan said, "but think about it. If you stay here, you will live somewhere. Why not invest in something that belongs to us?" "How much would it cost?" Bill asked. "I have looked at some places," Chan said, showing him real estate listings on her phone. "For a nice 2-bedroom apartment in a good building, maybe 3 to 4 million baht. That was 120,000 to 160,000 Australian dollars. Bill felt alarm. That was a significant part of his savings. "I need to think about it," Bill said. Over the next weeks, Chan pushed gently but consistently. She took him to view condominiums. She showed him financial calculations showing how much money they would save by owning instead of renting. She suggested that they could even rent the condominium short-term to tourists if they wanted to travel. "Here is my proposal," Chanya finally said. "You buy the condominium. It has to be in my name because foreigners cannot own property directly. But I will sign a document saying you are the true owner, and we will live together. It will be our home." Bill knew about Thai property laws. Foreigners could not own land, although they could own condominiums under certain conditions, but Chanya argued that it would be easier to buy in her name. "Do you not trust me?" Chan asked when Bill hesitated. "We have been together for months. I love you. I would never betray you." That statement, "I love you," was the first time Chan had said it, and she said it at the exact moment Bill expressed hesitation about making a major financial commitment. That was not a coincidence. It was precise psychological timing. "I love you too," Bill said, overcome with emotion. "Okay, let us buy the condominium." In January 2024, they found a 2-bedroom condominium in a mid-range building on 3rd Road for 3.8 million baht, about 140,000 Australian dollars. Bill transferred the money, and Chan handled the paperwork to acquire the property. Chanya showed Bill documents, ownership papers, purchase contracts, and receipts. Everything looked legitimate. The condominium was registered in Chan's name, but Bill received a copy of all the papers. What Bill did not understand was that the protective documents Chan had created, claiming that Bill was the true owner, had no legal force in Thailand. The condominium legally belonged to Chanya, without any legal obligation toward Bill. Bill had just invested $140,000 in property he did not own and over which he had no legal control. They moved into the condominium together. They bought furniture, a leather sofa, a large television, and a dining table. Bill paid for most of it, happy to create a home with the woman he loved. The first months in the condominium were happy. They established routines as a couple. Chanya cooked Thai food. They watched movies together. They took weekend trips to Bangkok and Hua Hin. For the first time in years, Bill felt complete. He had a home, a partner, and a purpose. The investment in the condominium, as financially risky as it may have been, seemed to be paying off in the form of a life that finally felt worth living. What Bill did not realize was that he had just walked deeper into a trap that would systematically take everything he owned. From February to August, Chan presented a series of family emergencies, each requiring significant financial support. In February, she said her brother had gambling debts and loan sharks were threatening violence. She needed $40,000 to settle the debt. Bill paid. In April, her daughter Ploy was sick, a serious infection that required hospitalization. Bill paid. In June, her family had a problem with land taxes, a debt of $50,000 that had to be resolved, or the government would seize their family land. Bill paid. In August, there was a problem with Chan's business partner at the bar, a money dispute, and a threatened lawsuit requiring $25,000. Bill paid. Each time, Chanya presented documents, hospital bills, legal papers, letters from creditors. Everything looked legitimate, and each time, Chanya seemed desperate and embarrassed to have to ask Bill for help. "I hate asking you for money," she said each time, crying. "But I have no one else. My family is poor. You are the only one who can help." Bill felt torn between his desire to help and his growing concern about his shrinking bank account. But every time he hesitated, Chanya assured him that this was the last emergency, that after this, everything would be stable. By September 2024, Bill had transferred a total of about $230,000 for various emergencies, in addition to the $140,000 for the condominium. His savings had fallen from $620,000 to roughly $250,000. Bill's rational mind told him something was wrong, but his emotional investment in Chanya was so deep that he could not imagine she was deceiving him. They lived together. They were intimate. She called him her husband. She showed him affection. Why would he believe she was manipulating him when her entire life seemed intertwined with his? What Bill did not see was that every emergency had been carefully constructed. The documents were forgeries. The family members with problems either did not exist or had never faced the problems described. Every dollar transferred went directly into accounts controlled by Chan's scam network. And while Bill believed he was building a future with Chan, she was already preparing to disappear once his account fell to a level where it was no longer worth continuing the scam. In October 2024, 14 months after their first meeting, Chan disappeared. It happened suddenly. One morning, Bill woke up and found the condominium empty. Chanya's clothes were gone. Her phone went straight to voicemail. Her social media accounts had been deleted. Bill panicked. His first thoughts were that something terrible must have happened. An accident, a kidnapping, a family emergency. He contacted hospitals. He called the Thai police. He sent desperate messages to every contact he had shared with Chania. No one knew anything, or if they did not say. After 3 days of desperate searching, Bill began to realize the horrible truth. Chania had not disappeared because something bad had happened. She had disappeared because she had completed her plan. Bill went to his bank to check his balances. What he found was devastating. His account, which should have had about $250,000, had only $26,000 left. There had been unauthorized withdrawals over several weeks. Chania had access to Bill's online banking. He had given her the login details months earlier when she helped organize the household finances. She had systematically transferred money in amounts small enough not to attract Bill's attention until the final larger withdrawals in the days before her disappearance. Bill also tried to enter the condominium, but found that the locks had been changed. He contacted the building management, who informed him that the condominium had now been rented to other tenants, authorized by Chan, the legal owner. Bill had lost everything. The condominium he had bought did not belong to him. The money he had transferred was gone. The woman he loved did not exist in the way he had believed. He went to the Thai police to try to file a fraud report. The officer was not helpful. "Do you have proof that she forced you to transfer the money?" the officer asked. "No, but she lied," Bill said, "about everything. The emergencies were not real. She took all my money." "But you gave the money voluntarily," the officer said. "And the condominium was legally bought in her name. You signed the documents. This is a civil matter, not a crime." "She deceived me," Bill insisted. "Can you prove that she knew the emergencies were false?" the officer asked. "Could it be that she had real problems and then decided to leave?" Bill realized the hopelessness of his situation. The Thai authorities would not or could not pursue fraud when documents showed that the victim had voluntarily transferred money. He contacted the Australian consulate in Bangkok. They were sympathetic, but not helpful. They could not enforce legal proceedings in Thailand and could only suggest that Bill hire a Thai lawyer to pursue civil remedies. Bill consulted 2 lawyers. Both told him essentially the same thing. Legal action would take years, cost thousands of dollars in legal fees, and have minimal chances of success because Chan had disappeared and her assets were hidden under different identities. By November 2024, Bill had accepted that he would not get his money back. From his original $620,000, he had about $26,000 left. More than 90% of his life savings had disappeared in 14 months. The months after Chania's disappearance were the worst of Bill's life. He fell into severe depression, could barely eat, and slept only a few hours each night. He had to move out of the condominium immediately. The new tenant demanded that he leave. Bill found a tiny room above a bar on Soi Buakaw for 2,000 baht, about $60 Australian per month. The room was hardly more than a cell, single bed, a small fan, and a shared bathroom down the hallway. Bill tried contacting Thai authorities again. He filed official complaints. He tried to track Chania's whereabouts. Nothing worked. She had completely disappeared. His children in Australia learned what had happened when Bill finally called Emma in a desperate moment. "Dad, how could this happen?" Emma said, crying. "You were always so careful with money." "I do not know," Bill said quietly. I thought she loved me. I thought I was building something real. Emma offered to send him money so he could come back, but Bill refused. He was too ashamed to return to Australia and admit how thoroughly he had been deceived. I cannot come back yet, Bill said. I have to figure out how to survive here. His situation was desperate. With only $26,000 in savings and no income, Bill had maybe 10 months before his money was completely exhausted. He tried to find work, but opportunities for a 60-year-old foreigner without a work permit in Thailand were almost non-existent. He could not work legally, and under-the-table jobs were poorly paid and unstable. Bill survived through extreme frugality. He ate cheap street food, 30 to 40 baht per meal. He avoided air conditioning to save electricity. He rarely left his room except for basic necessities. His mental health deteriorated rapidly. He developed severe anxiety and depression. He had no friends in Thailand. The few acquaintances he had made had all been through Chan, and, after her disappearance, they also distanced themselves from him. Emma sent occasional transfers, $500 or $1,000, but she expressed frustration that Bill refused to return to where she and Jason could help him. Dad, you are being stubborn, and it is killing you, Emma said during a video call. Just come home. Pride is not worth dying alone in a Thai slum. In August, Bill received a message from another Australian victim named Colin, who had also been scammed by Chan in 2022 and had lost $300,000. I have been trying to track her down for years, Colin wrote. Either she is connected to people who protect her, or she is very good at disappearing. Colin's investigator identified at least 7 confirmed victims over 5 years, with total losses of more than $2 million. But neither Thai nor international authorities showed interest in prosecution. Everything looks legal on paper, Colin explained. She does not steal at gunpoint. She builds relationships and asks for help. Proving criminal intent is almost impossible. By the end of 2025, Bill's savings were almost exhausted. $3,000 or $4,000 remained. Emma made urgent appeals for him to return, and even offered to buy the tickets. But Bill continued to refuse, unable to overcome the psychological barriers of admitting defeat. By the end of 2025, Bill's situation had reached a crisis point that could no longer be ignored. His savings were completely exhausted, his visa was expiring, and he had no legal way to remain in Thailand without money. He faced a harsh choice: accept Emma's offer of repatriation help and return to Australia in defeat, or stay illegally and face eventual arrest and deportation. One October morning, Bill finally made the call to Emma that he had been avoiding. I need to come home, he said quietly, his voice breaking. I cannot survive here anymore. Can you still help me come back? Emma cried with relief and immediately began arranging his return. She bought a plane ticket, coordinated with the Australian consulate, and prepared her guest room. On the day before departure, Bill walked through Pattaya one last time. He walked past the condominium building that had cost him 140,000 Australian dollars, but that he had never truly owned. He walked down Walking Street, where he had met Chan. Bill felt overwhelming regret, not only over trusting Chan, but over all the decisions that had led him to Thailand. If he had stayed in Australia, kept his business longer, and accepted loneliness, instead of seeking adventure, he would still have his savings and his dignity intact. At the end of October, Bill boarded a plane at Suvarnabhumi Airport with a single small suitcase. He had arrived in Thailand 14 months earlier with 620,000 Australian dollars and dreams of a new beginning. He left with nothing except debt to his daughter for the ticket and crushing shame over how thoroughly he had been deceived. Bill Harris now lives in Emma's guest room in Brisbane and is trying at 61 to rebuild minimal financial stability. He receives a small government pension that covers basic expenses and occasionally finds odd plumbing jobs through industry contacts who are willing to hire him despite his situation. His relationship with his children has improved somewhat now that he has returned and accepted their help. But the dynamic has fundamentally changed. Bill is no longer the capable provider. He is the dependent one who made catastrophic decisions and now relies on the generosity of his children. He has not spoken to his ex-wife Sharon since his return, unable to face that conversation. He imagines that she knows through mutual acquaintances. Bill rarely discusses his time in Thailand. When people ask about his retirement adventure, he offers vague explanation about things not working out. The full truth is too humiliating to share, except with his children and a therapist he sees weekly. She took my heart first. That made it easy to take everything else, Bill tells the few people willing to hear his story. I wanted so desperately to believe that someone could love me after the divorce. Chanya understood exactly what I needed to hear. He pauses, and his voice becomes quieter. The worst part is that I still do not know what was real. Was any moment genuine, or was every single day, over 13 months, just a performance? Bill has joined an online support group for romance scam victims and finds some comfort in connecting with others who have experienced similar devastation. But those conversations also reinforce how common such scams are and how rarely victims see justice. His health has improved somewhat with Australian medical care, but he struggles with depression, anxiety, and insomnia. He takes daily medication and attends therapy weekly. Bill's daily life consists of occasional plumbing work, therapy appointments, and long hours alone in Emma's guest room. He is alive and no longer facing homelessness, but the comfortable retirement he worked 40 years for has been permanently destroyed. Recently, Bill learned through Colin that Chan had been involved in another scam in Chiang Mai, targeting a Norwegian man. The victim lost about $300,000 before she disappeared again. Despite this evidence and Colin's continued efforts, no arrests have been made. Bill Harris came to Thailand in 2023 at the age of 60, seeking warmth, companionship, and a new beginning after divorce and business success. He believed he had found all three with Chan Ratanap. Instead, he found a professional predator who identified his vulnerabilities, exploited his desperate need for love, and systematically destroyed his financial security over 13 months before disappearing with more than $500,000 Australian dollars. At 61, Bill lives as a dependent in his daughter's house, works occasional odd jobs, and exists on minimal pension income. The house he sold to fund his Thailand adventure is gone. The successful business he built over 30 years is gone. The retirement savings that should have lasted the rest of his life are gone. And the woman responsible remains free and unpunished. She is probably targeting other lonely men somewhere else in Southeast Asia, using the same tactics that proved so devastatingly effective against Bill and at least 7 other victims whose lives she destroyed through perfectly calibrated lies. Bill's story is not about stupidity or cultural ignorance. It is about how even intelligent, successful, cautious people can be destroyed when professional scammers identify their emotional vulnerabilities and exploit them with extraordinary skill and patience. It is about how loneliness can overpower years of business experience and practical caution. And it is about how some traps are not built from obvious lies, but from perfectly performed affection, delivered by someone who understands exactly what you need to believe. If this story helped you understand the devastating reality of romance scams in Thailand, please subscribe to this channel. Bill's experience is tragically common. Thousands of men lose their life savings to similar scams every year, and most suffer in silence because of shame and embarrassment. The more awareness we build, the fewer lives will be destroyed. Share this story with anyone who is planning to retire abroad. And remember, love should never require you to give up all financial security or legal protection. Thank you for watching. And please protect yourself and the people you care about.